In this video, it is my hope to once and for all dispel the myth of the missing fundamental. There is a widely held myth called the missing fundamental in the bass register of a piano. This myth is very unfortunate and very untrue. I am here today to dispel that myth, hopefully once and for all, with irrefutable evidence. Is the fundamental present all the way down to A0? Of course. This comes from a Fazioli 308, which it is 10 feet 2 inches long, and yes, it does have longer strings in the bass, and yes, maybe I'm cheating a little bit, but I have confirmed this on a Steinway D more than 15 years ago using microphones, an instrumentation quality microphone that was below 20 hertz good and flat. Now, I'm going to be doing this on the PianoSens sensor, which is flat down to DC, okay? And it has a much better dynamic range and a much lower noise floor than any microphone. But nevertheless, let's look at it. What I have done is I've taken the PianoSens sensor and I placed it over A0, and I played the A0 and held the note down, damper up, for 60 seconds. That's right, 60 seconds, 1 full minute. The sensor continued to record string movement after 60 seconds, and the note was still only 50 dB down. That's minus 50 dB down from its initial attack level. The time domain waveform I'm looking at here that I'm showing you on this slide is an exact repetition period of A0. And the spectrum shows that the A0 fundamental is only 9 dB below the second partial A1. Let's look at these graphs. The graph on the left is the first 120 milliseconds, which could encompass 3 periods of A0. And this is the time domain, or an oscilloscope view, of what's happening right off the first hammer strike. In the hammer strike, we get a quick up and a quick down, and then a return to 0, and then some partial energy in between that. That quick up and quick down is only a couple of milliseconds. It's an impulse type function. And then we get an exact replication of that with a little bit of exponential attenuation at an exact period of 1 over 27 hertz. And that next period is exactly 1 over 27 hertz. The next period and so forth. So these are exact periods of 27 hertz. And you can see they've got an exponential decay period after period on them, which is what we expect in a piano. We get first order exponential decay as a first order approximation of the decay of a piano. Now look at the middle graph. The middle graph is after 60 seconds. And after 60 seconds, I'm down 50 dB. Now, the higher partial energies have more than decayed by 60 seconds later, but I have at least a good second, probably a good third partial still going on after 60 seconds with a good, clean signal to noise ratio, very clean. Now, look at the spectrum on the right. This is the spectral view of these time domain views. The spectrum shows that the first partial and the second partial are related to each other by only 9 dB down in amplitude of the first partial A0 to the second partial, which would be the A1. So we have A0 to A1 is only minus 9 dB. Now, minus 9 dB is roughly a factor of 3 in linear amplitude. That's very easy for the human ear to hear, something that's only 9 dB down. We hear way more dynamic range than that. We hear almost 100 dB of dynamic range. And yes, we hear a little bit less than that in the low frequency. Maybe we feel it more, but it's still very present and very apparent to the human ear. Now, let's look at the next slide. This is linear amplitude and linear time, and you can see the exponential decay after that impulse function. And then the middle graph is log magnitude on the y-axis in linear time over that same 60-second period. You can see the exponential decay. We're only down 50 some odd dB from the initial impulse. Now I'm going to play these files for you. I can't probably hold your attention for the full 60 seconds, but if I did play it for you for the full 60 seconds, you would still hear it as you play it right now. So maybe I'll play it for the first 20 or 30 seconds. I hope not to bore you with it. Here we go. As it continues to play here, I hope that I have given you convincing and irrefutable evidence that the missing fundamental is truly a myth. But I will say this. Of course, the shorter and the smaller the piano, the further down that fundamental will be in decibels. So maybe on a small grand, it would be down 15 dB. Upright, it might be down even more than that. But nevertheless, it is present. And the exact repetition rate that you see in the time domain is a clear indicator that it is actually there and is actually repeating at the period of the fundamental. Before we leave this topic, I'd like to look at this next slide, which is the note C2, and it's the transient response from the hammer strike. The one on the left was captured with a microphone, while in parallel, the one on the right was captured with the PianoSens sensor. Look at the difference. Within the first 2 milliseconds, the sensor precisely captures the hammer striking and releases the string, producing the first upper cycle of the wave. And then the second cycle and the third cycle and the fourth cycle are extremely clear periods of C2. Now, look at the one on the left, though, that for the first 5 milliseconds or so, the mic picks up a very, very messy looking waveform. And then it continues through the next 45 or 50 milliseconds, and it still looks very scrambled. Obviously, the microphone has a very poor transient response, and hence is unable to capture the pristine hammer and string movement right off the strike. Then I ask you, which device do you trust more?